The second mood.
Yeah.
What mood that is? I don't know.
That mood is entrepreneurship.
Right.
The extension cord is here currently, so I guess it tethers.
Yeah. Which I walked in and this was like this, and that worries me a lot.
You're just not grounded. That's the only.
I'm never grounded. Let's be real. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started since it is after 2 and I have no idea how long I'm going to talk. Basically, because I've been. Welcome to an introduction into cryptography and encryption. I'm sure all of you have a reason for being here, and I'm interested to find out what that is. But let's just kind of get into it. We're gonna have some tales of the crypto keeper. Get it? All right. So who am I? Why am I qualified to actually talk about this? No, but for real. Go back one. There we go. I currently work for Vestigo Ventures, which is a startup with Athens. I was also CTO of a healthcare startup and in charge of all the HIPAA security. People being able to tell what I'm doing online. And whether or not that's necessary, I'll let you decide that. So who cares about this stuff? Like, why should we care about encryption? Why should we care about cryptography? Like, one of the arguments that you'll hear is, well, I don't have anything to hide. Why do I need to care about privacy and encryption and things like that? And you'll find that that's not the problem here. That's not what we're coming. Thinking about it. There we go. All right. So y'all may have heard about this in the past couple months, the whole Apple versus the FBI thing. With that.
I didn't hear about this.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it was last November. There were a couple. The husband worked for the city of San Bernardino, and the FBI has been trying to get into his phone, into his work phone, for the past couple months. Normally when municipalities give phones to them to allow them to bypass the lock screens and things like, and bypass the encryption. San Bernardino, for whatever reason, didn't do this with this phone. So the FBI is at a certain number of incorrect passwords, it actually wipes the phone. And that's part of the security of working for a state agency, I guess, or a municipal agency. Basically tell Apple to create a custom version of iOS to put on this phone so that they could both wirelessly test any number of password attempts that they can and do it without wiping the data on the phone. Tim Cook doesn't want to do this for a number of reasons. I mean, realistically, so you'll hear it explained as kind of a backdoor to the encryption of the phone. And that's not necessarily the case. The FBI is not asking Apple to crack the encryption on the phone. That's not what they're encryption on the phone. That's not what they're doing. They're asking for kind of a master key to basically overwrite the OS and put a custom OS on it that and basically what's called brute force the password, which is attempting any number of combinations that's required to actually guess the password. CEO Tim Cook says that he believes that the order goes to mobile and could be used to access other operating systems or other phones. Because once you have something like that created, it doesn't matter how well you protect it. That's going to become vulnerable at some point, whether it's on Apple servers, whether it's on the FBI servers, whether it's, even if it's offline. Like the first line of security that you have is physical security, preventing people from actually getting to your servers. But even that can be bypassed. One of the things I like to say when I'm talking about security to people or insecure, you're on some sort of spectrum. Like you're either more secure or you're less secure, but there's nothing unless it doesn't exist. So that's what Tim Cook's trying to say. And I can't, there was a ruling that came out just last week, I think. And they're going back and forth with appeals because the court ordered Apple to do this. And Apple is refusing, essentially. And they've got, it's interesting because they're getting, backed by Google and Facebook and all these other tech conglomerates, which, in my opinion, don't really have a good handle on privacy anyways. But I think the dialogue around it is interesting because you have companies that erode your privacy, but they are fighting for them to do that without the government being able to force them to do that for the government, which I think is a very Google. It's in the terms of service. I mean, no one reads those, but it's still a thing. They're not exactly hiding what they're doing. The government being able to enforce this on a private company, or even a publicly traded company, to give them their users' data or give them access to their users' data outside of the normal subpoena process and outside of realistically outside of a process that can be seen by everyone in and of itself, I think it's one of the slippery slope arguments that you hear so much about. So it's interesting to see these tech conglomerates kind of trying to protect our security and our privacy, while, in my opinion, also eroding it at the same time. But that's a different topic. So what does this all have to do with encryption, anyways? I mean, what even is encryption? Like you hear this and you hear it in Hollywood movies, and it's like, well, I'm just going to encrypt this 256-bit Expo something. I don't even know. I really think they just get high and make up this dialogue and throw a bunch of tech words into a blender and see what comes out. So we're gonna get into what is actually cryptography, and to me it's really interesting. Cryptography is the science of using mathematics to encrypt and decrypt data. And this is something that's been around for a long time. Julius Caesar actually used to encrypt his messages to his generals. He used what's called a rotational or substitute. Oh wait, yeah, let's go back to this. How does it actually twerk? Get it? He used what's called a rotational or a substitutional cipher. What that means is basically any place where the letter A would appear in a normal message. Like if he said, attack the Gauls at 6 a.m. Or whatever they used for time. I don't remember. He would encrypt that message, and everywhere there was an A, he would replace it with an H. Everywhere there was a B, he would replace it with an I, and so on and so on. So if you didn't know what the actual substitution or rotation was, if you captured one of the messengers, all you would have is just a paper full of gibberish. I mean, they understood Latin, so the Latin isn't actually preventing them from reading it. Latin these days might actually be gibberish to us, but so he used what's called a rotational cipher to do that. And I mean, this was really effective. It gave the Roman army a technological advantage over a lot of their enemies. And depending on who you read, I have a background in history, so if you read, the Julius Caesar's, the Gallic Wars, The Gauls weren't all that smart anyways, so did he really need that technological advantage? But that's nonsense. Any
propaganda.
Right, exactly. Any technological advantage you have over your enemies is, I mean, it's a force multiplier. Whether those enemies are business competitors or whether they're a barbarian army trying to defend their lands that you have so needlessly invaded. So the plain text in this particular message, "Hello world," through a rotational cipher, if we use an 8 rotation cipher, becomes this nonsense, which is called the ciphertext. So if you know what the rotation is, you can receive this message and then apply a reverse or decrypt it, and you can actually read the original message. And that's what encryption is. It's basically just taking plain text, running it through some sort of cipher, and making it gibberish so that only the people who are supposed to be able to read it can read it. I thought this was an interesting quote. There are two kinds of cryptography in this world. Cryptography that will stop your kid's sister from reading your files, and cryptography that will stop major governments from reading your files. So we're going to talk about the second one. We can talk about the first if you're interested. If you have a very nosy little sister, we can talk about how to employ rotational ciphers. Chris was in my Intro to Rails class, and he actually wrote one as one of our projects. So it's not that hard. Also, it's not that hard to break.
Like Chris wrote one, so it's not that hard?
Yes. No, but the difference between strong and weak cryptography is the amount of time it would take to find the cipher to decrypt the ciphertext. And with the rotational cipher, for example, especially with computers these days, you can try pretty much every permutation of the rotation in the cipher. Like you can do it for 1 letter, for 2 letter, for 3, like you've only got 26 letters to do it, right? So that cipher is mathematically weak. Like it won't take that long to actually be able to find the cipher for that. So back to the Apple versus the iOS. The encryption that is used in iOS is strong cryptography. If you add to that the number after you enter an incorrect password after a certain number of times, and it's going to erase the data, then it's also destructive. You know, those spy movies, like if you type the password wrong 3 times, it's going to wipe the drive, and no, the nuclear codes will be lost or something. I don't know. That's kind of what the iPhone is doing. Why it's doing that depends on who's putting that encryption in place. If the data is safer to be destroyed rather than be recovered by the wrong parties, then that's probably a good move. In this case, I don't think that's the case, but that's an opinion that has nothing to do with the cryptography here. So the ciphers in encryption are actually the key to strong encryption. And with computers these days, we can come up with some really, really crazy algorithms to create these ciphers. Because that's all it is. A cipher is just an algorithm to encrypt plain text. And it's determined by 2 things: the computational power needed to brute force an attack on the ciphertext, and the key size. And that key size is basically talks about how many times the plain text is run through the cipher. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So there are 2 types of ciphers, at least that we're going to talk about today. There's asymmetric key ciphers, and there's symmetric key ciphers, or asymmetric key encryption or symmetric key encryption. So asymmetric key encryption, can you guess what this one is going to? If you're given symmetric key encryption and asymmetric key encryption, what do you think the differences are? All right, good. No one knows that. That means it's going to be all new knowledge. So asymmetric key encryption is also called public key encryption. There are 2 keys involved: a public key, which you can publish to the world, and it allows anyone to be able to encrypt a message or data to send to that key owner. So for example, if I have, well, I do have a public key that I can put out in the world, and anyone can take that public key and encrypt a message to me using that. That only I can decrypt using my private key, as long as I keep that private key secret. So the way it works is when you generate a public key and a private key, the public key is created first, and then the private key is created in such a way that it cannot be mathematically derived from the public key. There's a lot of math that goes into this, and I hate math, so we're not going to get into that, unfortunately. But there, I mean, this is some pretty intense, like, theoretical math stuff in terms of generating these keys. But this is a lot of how security on the internet works. So what we're going to go over a little bit on how PGP, which stands for pretty good protection. I know that they're very modest. Is a form of asymmetric encryption, and we're going to go over a little bit of that on how to actually encrypt your emails. But asymmetric key encryption involves hashing the message to produce a digest. So there are a couple things there. Hashing is running a message through essentially a one-way mathematical function to create a completely unique alphanumeric string. And it's impossible to read that was put into that from that string. Theoretically, mathematically, theoretically. And what that's called is a digest. And that doesn't necessarily protect the message, because what you can do is you can use computers now, and you could put in any number of messages to recreate that digest, and you've just got to find a match. And that's one of those things that's actually called a rainbow table attack, is they basically create a bunch of digests to match up with messages that they've basically captured from places. And see, okay, well, if this matches up, I know what I put in here, so I know what the hashing function actually is, and then you can recreate things. But what it can do is it can tell you whether or not a message has been modified in transit. And this is why it's important, why it's used as kind of like a digital signature for things. So I've worked with the GVI on some things, and talked to them in the past about how they track, for example, child pornography sharers and things like that. And what they do is they find these files. Either they find them from people they've already arrested, or stuff that they can't legally prosecute for whatever reason. And each of those files has what's called a SHA. Which is a digital fingerprint of that particular file. So what they do is they actually go in, they add a tracking, whatever they do, whether it's an actual tracker IP, whether it's some sort of subroutine in the video, something embedded in the video or the pictures or whatever, which changes the SHA. But now they know that they can track that SHA, that fingerprint. Which allows them to then capture people who are sharing that file using that same fingerprints. And because they already know what the file is, they don't even need to look at it again. They know if that fingerprint exists for that file, then they can prosecute on that. Like, that's solid enough evidence. Because you can't change anything in any of these files without changing the digital signature, without changing the digest. So this is just part of how asymmetric encryption works, is creating the digest. Because not only do you have to trust that what you're sending can only be read by the person with the private key, but also that the message hasn't been altered in transit. So hashing allows senders to attach a digital signature to the message, ensuring that the message received has not been altered in transmission. So like I said, this is not actually encryption. This is a part of a secure cryptographic system. I don't know if you remember, I I think it was 2011, LinkedIn decided that all they needed to do to protect and encrypt their passwords was run it through an MD5 hash. And someone used a rainbow table attack on LinkedIn and dumped about, I think it was 3 million passwords onto the internet. And yeah, that's because hashing isn't a secure way to store information. It is basically just a way to ensure that the information has not been altered. So if you're ever writing your own password system, which you shouldn't, and I'm not just saying, all right, I don't know what you're all capable of, but there are security experts that do this for a living. Trust them to do it. So don't use hashing as the actual encryption. Use it as a part of the secure cryptographic system. So some other things you might hear in conjunction with asymmetric encryption. MD5, SHA-1, SHA-2. Those are types of hashing functions. And they each do their own kind of thing. MD5, because that's been broken so many times, like it's almost, for hackers, it's almost child play to actually derive whether or not that was the function that was used and find the actual plain text for that. So very few people use MD5 anymore for digital signatures. Most people, it's recommended by the NSA and by the National Institute of Standards, and I forget what the T stands for. NIST. The guys who run the atomic clock. Yeah. It might be technology. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. The guys in Colorado that run the atomic clock, they recommend using something like SHA-2 for hashing, because that is still relatively new and still relatively mathematically solid. But there is a candidate for SHA-3 that is in testing right now, and I mean, I don't know how much y'all do with encryption or cryptography on the computer, but you can use SHA-3 to create hashes. So that's, if you're feeling pretty wild and you want to try some new unproven technology, SHA-3 is something you can start with. So you might hear something like salts and peppers, which I didn't actually put this together until the other day when I was putting together the outline for this talk. So you've got a hash, which a hash is traditionally a dish that you make in a pan with a bunch of different ingredients like potatoes and peppers and stuff like that, and salts. So salts and peppers are random alphanumeric hashes that are added to plain text to change what the ciphertext becomes, or what the outcome becomes, the digest. And this is particularly good for basically negotiating sessions with servers. Because what you can do is what a lot of systems do is they will use like the date time as a salt. So they'll have the message, they'll add the date and time to it, and then they'll add another random alphanumeric string. And then they'll run all of that through the hashing algorithm and get a completely different digest than they would have if they did it even 1 second later. So it allows servers to basically verify the authenticity of a message or a session negotiation that's going to the server. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. SSH uses something like that for their negotiation. And then you might hear something like public key infrastructure or certificate authorities. How many of y'all know the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? Or have heard like SSL, stuff like that. So SSL is basically, it encrypts web traffic between the browser, the client, and the server, whether that's Twitter, YouTube, your bank. And the way it works is it encrypts the data that's coming to you using its public key. And that way your browser can basically say, okay, yes, this is coming from this particular destination, this matches the key, but how does it know how to send that information back in such a way? And how does it actually verify that, okay, yes, that is not just someone who says that they're Twitter, using what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. So you've got these things called certificate authorities, and basically they say, yes, you can trust this certificate that I have generated for this particular entity because you can trust me, and I have 3 layers of trust backing that up. So the certificate authorities are the entities that actually generate the keys for the browsers and the servers to use in this SSL, which stands for Secure Socket Layer transmission. So they actually keep a store of private keys that even the entity that you're sharing that with don't have. So they can verify that, yes, the authenticity and the authorization for this particular message is appropriate. So if you ever hear in the news something along the lines of like, no, what? No way. Something like, this certificate authority has been discredited or has been hijacked. Like there was a probably 6 months ago, a year ago, Lenovo got into a big issue with that. They were basically self-generating certificates and putting them onto their computers that basically allowed that there's this concept called bloatware, which is all the crap you get on the computer that you don't need when you buy it. And basically that's how they keep the cost of computers down, is companies will say, I will pay you so much money to put this on your computer when you sell it to someone. And computer manufacturers are like, sure, yeah, why not? So someone came to them and said, we want you to put this program on your Lenovo laptops, but we need you to generate a security certificate for it so that it looks like it's coming from somewhere else, or that it's actually an insecure certificate. Like there's no certificate authority behind it. And Lenovo said, sure, why not? What could possibly go wrong? And within like 3 days of this hitting the market, like someone had cracked it and was using what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, where they were basically sitting in between the laptop and the intended destination with this fake certificate, basically saying, yeah, you can send the data to me. It's okay. Okay, what you got here? All right, credit card, email. Okay, yeah, we'll save that. And then they send it on to the original destination. So you have no idea that someone is actually intercepting your information, because you're getting the feedback from the original destination as you should, because they're just pulling out what they want and then sending on. They're not actually removing anything or editing it. So the digest doesn't change. The actual encryption isn't broken because it's encrypted with a certificate. It's just not a valid certificate. So if you ever hear about a certificate authority being compromised, pay attention, because that usually means that you might need to update something on your computer or your phone or something like that. So symmetric key encryption. What do y'all think this might mean?
Use the same key for encryption and decryption.
I don't have any candy for you, but yes, that is correct. Uses the same key for encryption and decryption. And it relies on a shared secret to be effective. So rotational substitutional ciphers are symmetric key encryptions because both parties of the message know the cipher. Essentially, they have the key, and these are some of the algorithms that use symmetric key encryption. You've got AES, which stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. Blowfish, which if you're going to write a password system, this is the type of encryption algorithm that you want to use because it's very, very thorough. As far as I know, it's yet to be mathematically disproven or cracked. You've got ARC4, and then are you all familiar with the Enigma device from World War II? That was a case of symmetric key encryption, which that encryption would still stand today if the Germans hadn't actually made procedural blunders in actually using the encrypted systems. Anyone here see the Imitation Game? Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Really good.
And I mean that's legit. They wouldn't have broken that cipher if the Germans hadn't repeated the same message every single morning. If they hadn't said Heil Hitler at the beginning of their weather report, Turing would have not had anything to go on to base finding the cipher off of. So I mean that's one of those things where it's not a weakness in the cryptographic system itself, that's a weakness in the implementation. And that's what you'll find with a lot of cryptographic systems. It's not the cryptography itself. Now some are mathematically weaker than others, but a lot of times it's the implementation of the system that actually creates the vulnerability. And we can talk about that a little bit. They're weak to some of these attacks. So what Turing used to help break the Enigma cipher was what's referred to as a known plaintext attack. Because once he was able to determine that little bit of the message, he knew he had something that he could put in every single message and basically compute the cipher for that particular day. Because that was another one of the challenges. The cipher changed the key every single day. But if you know the plaintext, then you can figure out the cipher. And then linear cryptanalysis, which is some sort of mathematical term for studying the cipher and basically trying to break the algorithm. Don't ask me to explain that. Not because I don't want to, but because I can't. So a lot of the mathematical stuff that goes into this is over my head, which is fine because I don't need to know the math. I can trust the math on a lot of this stuff. So it's a lot of like really, really like dense like mathematical and implementation stuff. Like, y'all feel full yet? Like, is your brain like swimming? Like, sure you have more questions than answers at this point. Yeah. So we're gonna move on from that stuff, from the theory stuff, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about what you can do to be a little bit more secure and improve your privacy online. So security versus privacy. There's generally this dichotomy depending on who is trying to be secure and who is trying to be private. So you'll hear, how many of you are familiar with the Ben Franklin quote, those who sacrifice privacy for security deserve neither? And that's, or no, maybe it's the other way around. I think
Liberty for security.
Like that. I don't. The point is, a lot of times that this argument is used is when it's referring to like national security. Like in terms of national security, the privacy of the citizens like is secondary to the needs of the state. I have lots of personal opinions on that. I think that's a bunch of bunk. But we can have that discussion later. The point is, neither are a binary state. You're neither completely secure or completely, well, you might be completely insecure. I don't know. I can't speak for you. But you're also not completely private or completely public. You know, there are always things that you're doing that will prevent all of your information from getting out there. But at a certain point, there's nothing you can do to prevent any of your information getting out there. Even Ron Swanson, like, gets stuff. Like, there's no way to completely be private anymore with the amount of interconnectedness that we have. Unless you move to the middle of the Congo, in which case, you know, no one's going to find you in a rainforest. But is that really the life you want to live? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know your life. So a good way to think about it is privacy is really just security for your personal information. So you want to be personally, you want to be as secure as possible, or I say secure as possible, as secure as you want to be. For example, I'm not on Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook because I'm not willing to give Facebook the information that they want in order to just sell me stuff. Like, to me, that's not a good trade-off. I am on Google though, because I get more benefit out of giving Google my personal information than I would from Facebook. And that's just a decision I've made. Like, anyone can make any decision they want. And I think that's the important thing is being informed about what those decisions actually mean. So protecting your email. How many of y'all here are on Gmail? Okay, so Gmail is actually real easy. There's a Chrome plugin called Mailvelope, which, I mean, all right, which is basically, it's a PGP plugin for Gmail. And it basically allows you to encrypt your emails in Gmail with a click of a button. Like you generate the key right there in Gmail, and it sends it along with the message to whoever's receiving it, so that they can then decrypt it and see what you have to say. So it's, I mean, it's literally like a one-click install. So it's pretty awesome. If you're using something like Outlook, like if you want to encrypt your emails for work, you can do that as well. All you have to do is there's a program called Cleopatra, which allows you to generate your PGP keys and then encrypt your email body in it, and then send the key along with the ciphertext to the recipient. There's a little bit more work on the other end for if the other end user is an Outlook user, they've got to spend some time generating their own key and decrypting it and all this stuff. But you know, you can't do everything, right? I've got a link here. I'm going to put these slides up online and send y'all a link to it, so you can go through and click on links and stuff. And it's not actually a difficult process. I will say, and starting here, I will say, the more attention you pay to making yourself more private and secure, the more government lists you're probably going to be put on. Yeah, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just this person is encrypting their emails. I don't know why. We'll just put their name on a list just in case, you know. To me, it's just one of the prices you pay. I would rather be a person of interest, because I know I'm so far down the list, it's not even funny, than to just allow any moron to hack my Gmail account and read my emails, or do any other nefarious thing that they want to. But this next one, this one might get you a little bit more attention. I have not done this yet myself, just because it's a lot of work to try and get other people that I talk to do it. But there's a company called Whisper Systems that have created an app both for phone and for SMS encryption, provided that the other person is also using the app. They have apps that create end-to-end encryption of whatever's being said or texted between the two users, and they don't have access to it. It uses asymmetrical encryption that only you have the private key to. So that's, if you want to talk to, I don't know how crazy your friends are, but if you want to do a surprise party and you want to be able to, you know, look, I'm trying to think positively here, right? We're all friends here. That you can use this to basically text other people and have it be encrypted and not be able to be read by the NSA, by Whisper Systems, by your little sister, little brother, ex-girlfriend. Yeah, exes. Yeah. But yeah, so there's this. Whisper Systems creates a couple of apps that you can use for that. If you want to get really, really crazy, you can also download an extension called OpenPGP, which allows you basically to encrypt anything that you want. Like if you want to encrypt your 5-page paper that you're submitting to Dave Gunton, you can do that and force him to decrypt it. I don't know. Actually, he'd probably come after me for that. Don't do that. But then if you want to hide your web browsing traffic, you can also do that using VPNs. And Michael here is actually CEO of a startup in Athens called Proxy Server, which does VPNs. You want to talk a little bit about the benefits of using VPNs?
Sure. So I think the thing that VPNs gives people over encrypting your emails or encrypting just your phone or voice, is it gives you the ability to do it all with the click of one button. And again, like Jordan says, there's not going to be any solution that is completely safe, if you will. But the one thing that VPNs do that make it very easy for the average person, which is the market that we're going after, is it makes encrypting everything very easy. So if one person, if there's a leak with a certificate authority and you have a Lenovo laptop, but you're using a VPN, that's at least something that you're doing that everyone else with Lenovo laptops isn't. So you've got to kind of think about encryption as not necessarily outrunning the bear. So the people trying to get you, because odds are they're never really going to come after you or me. They're going to try and throw as much stuff out there and try and get as much information as possible. And what VPNs do with the AES encryption that we use is it gives you the ability to just be one step removed from pretty much those that aren't using it. So again, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the person in the coffee shop sitting next to you who's not using it. So VPNs are, when I started this 2 years ago, I never would have imagined in 20 years that this much attention would be brought to encryption. It's great for us, so we're certainly enjoying that part, but I think it's great timing for things too, because a lot of people don't recognize that, you know, like Jordan was saying with the man in the middle attacks, when you're sitting in a Starbucks and you think you're connected to Starbucks free Wi-Fi, you know, you're really just connected to Starbucks free Wi-Fi as a hotspot on my phone, and all of your data and information that comes through, I potentially have access to, and everything else I send on the way, and you sadly don't know the wiser. So with the VPN, you can essentially protect yourself from a lot of these dangers with just one button. And we're one of a lot of providers that do it, but I think one thing that makes it easy for us is to separate ourselves is we make it very simple. It's not, you know, something you've got to go in and alter settings. It's not something you got to, you know, spend a lot of time configuring like Whisper. It's just something you go in and click a button when you're on public Wi-Fi and you're good.
It took me 5 minutes to set up, and that's because I was being lazy. It's really simple to get set up.
Kind of like Tunnel Bear. Or
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Actually.
And yeah, yeah, their mobile app is coming out. What, 6 months?
Yeah, mobile. We're on Mac and Windows now, so mobile's about 3 to 4.
Yeah. So in the meantime, if you want to use VPN on your mobile device, Tunnel Bear.
Tunnel Bear is good.
Yeah. One of the things I do some security consulting for web developers and for web apps and sysadmin stuff. I tell them, because security is not a binary condition, the best you can do is not be low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Like, don't be something that, you know, don't have your information out there. Take that extra step just to be a little bit more secure, and you're already ahead of the curve. It's
like 99% ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
They say 16. I was reading an article the other day, and they say 16% of people in the U.S. have used a VPN, and that includes the people who use it for work. So there's a lot of people not protecting themselves out there,
yeah,
not taking that extra step.
And for me, it's not one of those things you necessarily have to use all the time. Like, I use it just from time to time when I'm doing things. I won't get into specific things, but a lot of it's research. Yeah, no, seriously, like, it's research. I don't want it coming up that I was looking up, how does a nuclear fission actually work in terms of a bomb? No, but it's one of those things that it's that extra step that you can take, and it's not that difficult to do. And what makes it even easier is Proxy Server has a free 7-day trial. Hey, look at that. This wasn't sponsored at all in part by Proxy Server. No, it was. So yeah, if you go to proxyserver.com, you can get a free 7-day trial and try out the VPN if you want, to see if it's for you. I mean, like I said, it's one of those decisions that you're going to have to make for yourself, whether or not you want to put the effort into doing it. Because one of the challenges that you come into as a web application developer, one of the challenges I have is building a secure application that is also not going to drive our users crazy. Because we can enforce two-factor authentication on every login. We can enforce you changing your password every 6 months and having it be 36 characters long and all this. But you're going to hate me for it. And I understand that. I'm a user too. I hate typing long passwords. I hate having to change my password. So finding that balance that works for you, I think, is what you need to do. Because it takes more time to be secure, and it takes more effort to be secure. It's not the default setting, and that's a different philosophical discussion that we can talk about. Like, why isn't it the default setting? Why are we not protecting of our users' privacy and things like that? All right, so I'm going to open up for questions and answer Q&A just a second here. I want to go ahead and throw out there though, I'm also one of the organizers of the software developer meetup here in town. We have our meetups first Tuesday of every month, so next week. And if you're interested, go to developersofathens.com, and we've got more info there. We are also affiliated with the Athens Women in Tech group, and they have their meetups the second Tuesday of every month. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, their information is also on the Developers of Athens page. And then we've got some people listening in over YouTube and on Slack. And if you're interested in getting involved in the community and talking to other developers and technical people and others in the startup community here, check out talknerdytome.herokuapp.com, and that'll send you an automated invite for joining the Slack community, which also I don't know if y'all have used Slack. I know y'all are on Slack. I don't know if y'all have used Slack yet. It's fantastic. It's a great communication tool.
Slash like tremendously.
Oh yeah.
And distracting.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of the joy. Yes. All right. So Q&A. What you got?
So how does this fit in with the you use Tor, I assume?
Tor. Mm-hmm.
So how does that fit in with that? Because Tor is nice and secure, but also makes relatively so.
No. It was cracked by MIT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that recent?
Yeah. What, 6 months ago?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there was some debate over how secure the nodes were, because they were like, over half of the nodes have been infected by malware.
Okay. So the question is, how does Tor, which stands for the onion router, how does that fit into this discussion of security and privacy? And what Tor actually is it's essentially a proxy. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
I'm not as well versed with Tor as I am with VPNs, but my understanding is it basically takes the data that you're requesting, chops it up into a bunch of pieces, and sends it out to everybody else.
And then each layer decrypts part of the message.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like a LimeWire or a Kazaa for your data transfer. But like you were kind of hinting at, like if one node, exit node, that your data is going
because
through.
the entrance and exit nodes are not encrypted. So
right.
Either one of those.
Right. And that's, again, this is an implementation weakness in a secure cryptographic system.
It's good. I mean, it works.
But it's also really slow.
It's really slow. I mean, I would also question the use cases for why you would need Tor.
Yeah.
And a lot of, that you wouldn't use a VPN for.
Yeah, what is the difference? Is it inherently?
I don't think it, I think Tor is one of those things. I think Tor realistically is set up for people who want to use some sort of nefarious purpose. Seriously.
Yeah.
Or they are just, I don't know, because it's not exactly secure. You don't get anything from it that you wouldn't get from a VPN, in my opinion. I think and you have even less control over who actually sees your data than you do in a VPN. In a VPN, you have to trust that the VPN provider is maintaining the infrastructure and the entrance and exit nodes, and that they're securing those.
So you think that just pick a VPN, trust, and
Yeah,
roll with it?
yeah, yeah. I think that's the best you can do.
Yeah, and pay for it, like free VPNs or.
Because I was like, because I noticed
Don't
using a VPN, it's way faster
Mhm.
browsing wise.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there's any trade-off that you made in terms of security. But it sounds like it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's an end-to-end connection, and they used to be really, really slow, but in the past 10 years, the infrastructure's come along.
The encryption's come along.
The
encryption was what used to take like so long. Depending on what VPN provider you buy, you'll see different types of encryption. So you can get the standard, I would say, is AES 128-bit right now. There's 256-bit out there, but that encryption adds a little latency to your browsing experience. So it's not the default for us. We use 128 by default, but yeah, I mean, just explore.
Well, and
because I think AES 128 still is supposed to take longer than
still another 5 years.
I mean, it's AES 128 is still more secure. Like it is like 2 or 3 levels above what is recommended by the government for HIPAA compliance in terms of encryption, which to me just boggles my mind. But that's that is a different another topic of conversation we can go on.
I'm thankful every day that we don't have to use like AES 128 for our HIPAA.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We used we used AES 256 because we didn't have that much that we actually had to encrypt. Yeah, it really does. That decision may have come back and bit us in the ass in the long run, but it's still infinitely more secure than a lot of what's out there now. So yes, to answer your question, don't go with Tor, go with a VPN and pay for it, and find someone to trust with it. What else? Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Were you on Apple or Android?
Oh, well, as an FBI agent, no, I'm actually surprisingly I don't like Apple, but I appreciate what they're saying, because it is kind of a Pandora's box when you start doing what the government's asking them to do. And I don't like using the slippery slope argument because we could predict anything as a slippery slope. But in this particular case, I think that history shows us that that would be abused, and you can't put it back in the box at that point. So surprisingly, I'm on Apple's side, because I'm Burt Macklin, FBI.
The good thing is the Justice Department, they just dropped the suit yesterday.
Oh, really?
They were able to get into the iPhone through a third party.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes you
Who do you
scratch
think
your
the
head.
it was? McAfee?
I heard it was
Israeli company?
It was a company out of Israel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's an Israeli
I
company.
don't know the name.
Yeah. If you want to talk about a
It
democratically
came out
elected
last night.
totalitarian government, sorry, that's other political opinions that have no place in this talk. No, but
so you still don't know how this would have shaken out.
I'm glad we don't have to answer it yet.
Yeah.
I'm
The
glad.
battle's over, the war's not over.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the more people, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this class while all this was going on, is because I want y'all to be informed with what's actually going on and the actual weakness that would be introduced to the system if a backdoor like this were created.
There's a lot of arguments about they're like, we'll just make a version of iOS for us, and it's like, well, at that point, code is protected under free speech, and if you're forcing someone to do that, that's coercion, right?
Right. Right. What are they going to do? They're going to
it gets real deep.
sit there with a developer with a gun to their head, build in a cryptographic backdoor, yeah, that
and then it's like, okay, force Apple to do it. Well, then all their developers on that we're talking about, well, we'll just quit. So because we don't want to do it.
Right. Right.
Then you got to hire new people and retrain them.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, it depends how many people you think are going to make a moral stand there versus take that nice Apple money.
Are they going to take? Is Apple going to pay for it, or is the government going to try and pay for it?
Well, no one's paying for it
Right,
anymore. So.
right. This is all hypothetical. Yeah,
That's fine, right?
yeah. So, any other questions? No?
What password manager do you
I
like?
like LastPass personally. LastPass is good. I've
Even though it got broken into a while back.
yeah, because it wasn't. Again, it was an implementation weakness. It wasn't their actual system, like the encryption part of it, and it was only certain parts of it. So if you change your master password at that point, it actually still was secure. So yeah, I mean, everything's going to get broken into at some point. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So
Yeah, I totally forgot my master password for LastPass, so I was gonna be like, hey, guys, can I get that back? Because I totally forgot.
yeah, I will say if you use password manager, which if you don't, you should, because there's a lot of benefit to it. Yeah. So are you familiar with password managers at all? Excellent. All right. Password managers essentially give you the ability to generate secure passwords for every login that you have. So your Facebook, I'm afraid to ask this question. How many of y'all use the same password forever now? Yeah, and I mean, that's okay. You're not alone. That's not a judgment. It's an insecurity. And that's what something like LastPass or OnePass will allow you to do, is it'll allow you to generate secure passwords for every single login that you have, and then store those behind a master password. So all you have to do is put in your master password, and it'll protect the other logins behind it.
And it auto fills it in, so you never have to remember a password again.
That is the best part.
Yeah,
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, I can't speak to LastPass, but as an application, OnePassword, you literally just type like command \/ and it's after you unlock it with your master password. Like I don't know any of my passwords, really anything. They're all 50 character generated. I'm not even my ID.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's probably good and bad.
Yeah.
But every time I have to change one, I'm just like, okay, generate new, put it in there, done.
Because you should change your passwords every 6 months or so. You shouldn't use the same password for more than one login. And these, I mean, I don't follow these all the time, so like it's again effort and time. But the more you can do that, the more removed you are from being low-hanging fruit. And LastPass, I mean, it costs like I think $12 a year or something like that, and you get it on all of your devices. Like you can use it for free on the web, and that's great. I paid the $12 so I can never have to type a password in on my phone ever again, because that is a nightmare. So yeah, I would recommend looking at some password managers. Yeah. All right, and it's about 3 o'clock, so unless you guys want me to keep talking, I'll shut up. Yeah. Okay. Good talk. All right.